Welcome back to another episode of Seek Your Summit, the show where we dive into stories of people who turn pain into purpose and setbacks into stepping stones. I'm your host, Jenn Drummond, and today's guest, Tiffany Barnes. Resilience in human form. Emancipated at 15, Olympic torchbearer, founder of Queen Bee Properties, author of The Throwaway Girl, Tiffany survived what most wouldn't and chose impact over anger. She shared her journey on hundreds of stages. She's built a real estate empire. She's mentored thousands climbing out of their own darkness, and she's just getting started. This one's about grit, growth, and guts it takes to rewrite your story, so let's get into it. What was the moment that you realized you had to take control of your life?
When I was 13 years old.
13.
Yeah, my mom had kicked me out of the house and had a yard sale and sold all my stuff.
In front of you, right?
In front of me, yeah. I had told her that I was being molested by my stepdad. And basically, he gave her a choice. He said, you got to choose. She's lying. This isn't true. And you got to choose between your daughter and me. And my mom didn't even hesitate a minute, what felt like a minute, and said, you have until tomorrow to get the bleep out of my house. And had a yard sale, sold all my stuff, and I was gone in a garbage bag, hence why my book is called The Throwaway Girl.
Wow. Now, did you have other family, or what were your options at 13?
I felt I didn't have a lot of options. Unfortunately, I come from a very dysfunctional family. My dad was my one saving grace, and that's actually where I ran to.
Okay.
He lives about 45 minutes north of where I was living, and jumped on a UTA bus, which is our local transit. And before I left the house, however, I had one of those Tootsie Roll banks. Remember those from back in the day?
Yes.
And I had just some coins in there, maybe $1 or $2, and that's what I used to get on the bus, and took a couple different routes to get there, and showed up on my dad's doorstep and said, Mom kicked me out, and here's the situation. And he took me in, thankfully. But he just didn't have the resources to support me, unfortunately. And that's kind of where I had about a 2-year dark period before I really came to the light, if you will. Became suicidal, anorexic, felt that if my mom didn't want me, why should I be here? Took a lot of that, burden on, thinking that something was wrong with me, that maybe I brought this onto myself in a way. I mean, you're 13. You don't know. You're going into puberty. You're growing into yourself. You don't know how to analyze why parents do what they do. And so it just became one of the darkest parts in my life. And there was a moment I said to myself, today's going to be the day. Today's going to be the day I end my life. I don't want to be here anymore. And then I had, kind of this devil and angel situation where I had the devil on my shoulder saying, do it, kill yourself. And then I had the angel on the other shoulder saying, but if you do that, who really wins here? You're letting this defeat you, and you're meant for so much more. And I chose to listen to that voice.
Thank God.
And so I reached out to my best friend at the time, and I said, Amy, this is what I'm going through. I don't want to be here. I don't know what to do. And she said, do me a favor. By the way, we didn't have a telephone at the time, so I had to go to a payphone at the grocery store, and I'd sit there and talk to her on this payphone. She's like, give me the number to the payphone. I'll call you right back. Give me 30 minutes or so. I want to talk to my parents. And she talked to her parents, and they said, you can come live with us.
Oh.
So I went and lived with them for a period of time, and that really became a saving grace. But I just still had this rootlessness, meaning I felt like I was a burden to them, even though I wasn't. They did nothing to make me feel like I was. Mm-hmm. But I just had this, I feel like I'm burdening them by being here, and now they have to take care of me. And so that kind of began my journey of emancipation. So
yeah, I have 13-year-old children, and I can't,
oh, wow.
Right. And so for me to look at that 13-year-old right now and comprehend what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a hard time finding eggs in the grocery store. Okay. Yeah. So the fact that you could figure out a bus system, get where you're going, and then just still have that resilience of, hey, there's something in me that needs to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lean into that. And it is so true. Our story is our perception of what's going on, whether that's real or not, right? And it's normally more of what's going on in our inner world than really what's going on in our outer world when we're saying, oh, I'm a burden, or I'm taking up space, or I'm all these different things.
Yeah.
Right? It's fascinating. How did you work through that?
A lot of it was journaling, which
Okay.
is why I wrote my book. As I went back, I think at that time I had 20 plus journals. I constantly journaled.
And where did you learn journaling?
Actually, when I was 8 years old, my aunt gave me a journal, and
Okay.
I wrote in. I used to have my mom write in it, I guess, because some of my first entries, you can tell my mom's like, my mommy's writing this for me or whatever. And then I started to write for myself, and I named my journal. So
Okay.
her name was Aubrey.
Aubrey.
And so I'd say, Dear Aubrey, as if I was writing to a friend.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that gave me solace and comfort rather than just writing on a page. It was as if I was writing to a friend. And so I would just felt that I wasn't judged. I could put whatever I wanted on paper.
Were you ever worried that somebody was going to grab your journal and read it?
No, I used to have one of those ones that would lock. Remember those?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they
yeah,
were
but
fuzzy and they'd
lock,
lock.
like you could pull
I know,
off.
but at the time I didn't know. I thought, oh, nobody can get into this. Yeah.
It's locked.
But I did have a friend once, I remember, I got in a fight with her because she got into my journal. I was like, this is mine, you can't read this, or whatever, when you're a kid. But yeah, journaling really helped me, and music.
Okay.
Music was huge. Even to this day, you can tell my mood by the music I'm listening to.
Okay.
And I became a huge Dave Matthews Band fan.
Yeah.
And his music, that album, Under the Table and Dreaming, just somehow spoke to me and really kind of helped me. I'd listened to it till it almost burnt out and I had to buy another one. But music and writing and journaling was what got me through. Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I know when things get hard for me and I come back from a climb, I have to write it down because I have to see it.
Okay.
Because otherwise it feels like it's in my brain and I don't know, and then I keep multiplying it.
Yeah.
But when I get it on paper, I'm like, oh, but it's already on paper. And then this is on paper. So it just makes things easier to manage than if
Sure.
it's not on paper, it's in my head and I just can't get my head around it as well. Music for me too, especially when I'm doing something hard.
Yeah.
Music seems to help more, right?
Right.
It's just a good background and it gives the vibe of where I want to go and maybe not necessarily where I am at the moment.
Right. Yeah, like when we work out, right? We'll listen to something to pump us up, or I like to do bike races and I'll listen to music that'll get me going. So I identify with what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay, what kind of bike races do you do?
I do century rides.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay, have you do low to jaw?
No, I'm
Okay.
not that great.
Yet.
do not yet. Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah.
Okay, but what do you do them around here?
Yeah, so I like to do Goldilocks, which it goes
Okay.
from Provo to Mona and back.
Okay.
So that's quite a ride there. They also have Little Red, which is a lottery bike race that you can get into.
Heard
It's all
about that
women.
one. Okay.
I did it just to kind of lose weight, and also the more the miles went by, the more my problems went away. So when I jump on a bike, it's so, kind of like driving a car, which I probably shouldn't admit this because riding a bike on the road can be scary with drivers today. But I'll go 30 miles, and 10 of those miles I'll think, how did I get here? You get on that autopilot, but it's because I was working out my thoughts as I was riding and my problems or things I need to get through. So
Yeah. No, I'm a proponent of endurance sports.
Oh,
when
cool.
you are struggling with something.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was climbing K2 and I got to the top, which is a big deal in mountaineering world. And so I went to call my family. And I had a voicemail from my kids, and they didn't like Yosemite National Park. So they checked themselves out of this camp that they were in. That was a fortune. And I was so angry. Like, I was the angriest I think I've ever been. But because I had to hike 55 miles out of camp and then take airplanes and all this kind of stuff to get home, like from the beginning of the hike to the end of the hike, I'm like, no, I need to get back to that anger spot because they need to feel how angry I am and know this is a big deal of what they did.
Yeah.
But it is so true. I think like emotions need motion.
Yes.
And when we give them that
yes.
motion, then all of a sudden they lose their grip on us and they pass through.
Yes, 100%. I love that saying. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. No, whenever one of my kids is wired, I'm like, take a lap, go around the house. Like, we just
Yeah.
need a little space here or whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
So you started the emancipation thing. It took a couple years, right?
Yeah, I was 15. I was the second case in the state of Utah for that age to ever be legally emancipated from my parents.
I
So
can't even
I lived on
imagine.
my own all through high school, wrote my own notes to get out of school. Please excuse Tiffany Barnes for being late. Thank you, Tiffany Barnes. And kids would say, that's not fair. I don't get to write my own notes and stuff like that. But I was like, yeah, but I'm being an adult. You go home to a warm bed and food, and I have to work for my food. I have to pay rent. And I was working 3 jobs.
You were working 3 jobs?
Yeah.
And going to school?
Yeah, I got to leave like at noon for a work release program where I still got credit
Okay.
for working. And I worked at Shopko.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
And I was just a cashier at the time. And I'd work 4 hours there, and then I'd have a break, usually from 4 to 5, and then I worked 6 to 10 as a waitress or a hostess, depending on what they needed at the time at a restaurant. And then I had a job on the weekends as well. So.
Wow. And then how did you go from that to where you are now?
Man, that's a big jump.
It's a big jump. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go from like 15 to 25.
15 to 25, I ended up going to college. I got 23 different scholarship offers.
I know that because you had the best essay to get into school, or because people knew your story and they're like, if she can hustle through this, she can get through anything?
I think it was my story, but I graduated top of my class, honors. I still showed up and did what I needed to do to be, eligible for those scholarships. But I think a lot of it, too, was I didn't want to be anything my parents were.
So you're running from that.
Yeah, my parents didn't graduate high school. My parents got pregnant while they were teenagers. So I was trying to do all the opposite. My mom's a drug addict, didn't want to do drugs, all of that. So I just really took everything they were and said, I'm going to be the opposite. And that drove me. But a lot of things, too, about that was the accolade of it.
Yeah, feels good,
So,
doesn't
yeah,
it?
I never got those gold stars. I never got that atta girl growing up. And so it almost fed my flame in a way,
Right.
where I had these adults giving me these awards and giving me these scholarships or whatever the case may be, and I was like, I was thriving on that, and I think that was a big push for that as well. So
Okay. So with the scholarships, how did you decide where you were going to school?
I went to the University of Utah.
Okay.
That's the scholarship I chose.
Okay.
Because I always thought like, wow, that was the unattainable to go to the University of Utah for some reason in my brain. And I was already living in the area. I so much wanted to go there that I was going to Kearns High, which if people don't know Salt Lake City, that's like a 45-minute bus ride because I was still taking the bus because you have to take different routes. So I was like, I'm going to live over by the U because I know that's where I'm going to end up going to school. So I was living by the U but going to school 45 minutes away because I just knew. I already was manifesting it for myself and envisioning it. So it almost didn't matter if I got a Harvard scholarship. I was going to go to the University of Utah. I already had that in my brain. So.
And do you think... I think that's fascinating, right? Because we're taught so much about manifestation and visualization.
And I didn't know it then.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
no one knows it at that age.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to teach my kids and they're like, whatever, Mom. But you had this, this is where I belong.
Yeah.
And just that knowing.
Right.
And how did you learn to trust that gut instinct?
I think it just never let me down. I had people surrounding me that were constantly letting me down. The most important people, really, my parents, right, in a sense. And so I knew I could only really rely on myself, or that's how I felt. I was only in control of myself. And so I really trusted myself. I knew if I put my mind to something, I could absolutely do it. And I think that's kind of the driver for all of that. So
That's a lot of confidence to have, especially in the circumstances that you were in.
I know. It's funny because you say confidence, and I think, oh, man, I definitely wasn't confident. But I guess I was. But for me, it just felt like there was something inside. I know it now because I'm 42 years old, but then I didn't know. Right. It's just that because I don't want to get into anything too woo-woo here, but I just felt now as an adult, it was part of my soul contract. I came here knowing I'm going to go through these things, these trials and tribulations, because that's what I signed up for, to come here. And that's a whole nother podcast, I'm sure. Yeah. But at the time, I just felt there's something within me that I meant to thrive. I meant to, light my flame within, which was the whole inspiration for the Olympics when they came and I got to run the torch, and I think that it just was that I have this special something inside of me that says, you can do this, keep going. You're meant to be a catalyst for others.
I love this because I feel like I'm one of these mission-driven people.
Yeah.
And it's just I can't explain it. I don't know why. When I got into this car accident and survived and then got into mountaineering, I had never slept in a tent before.
Okay.
So it wasn't this evolution of, oh, this makes sense, A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
It was why is this coming in from left field? And I'm like, I don't know, but I know. I know I'm supposed to do this thing. Okay, you know
exactly what I mean.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's hard to explain to others, but when you really tune into who you are, the rest of it just becomes noise and it's kind of part of the project. Mm-hmm. You're oh, well, you're supposed to act this way because that just gives me more story or content or whatever to become who I'm supposed to become. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
Love that. Yeah.
So did you ever feel pressure to have it all together?
Yes.
Because it was only you?
I did, and mostly from my peers. So
your peers?
I got bullied a lot because I lived on my own, believe it or not.
Really?
Bullied or kids thought I was the coolest thing because
well, like
I
one or
didn't
the
have
other.
parents at home. Let's go have a kegger at your house. Let's go have a party at your house. No supervision. Or other kids would bully me like, oh, are you homeless? And I'm like, no, I'm not homeless. I mean, I rented a basement apartment. I wasn't like living fancy by any means. But I felt this pressure from my peers in a sense, and it was self-induced in a way too.
It always is at some level, right? Like we bring in what we need to heal.
Right. And it was like had this looking glass on me because kids knew I was different. My 25-year high school reunion's coming up this August.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm kind of like, how is this going to go? Because they knew me when I was emancipated and this abused girl and all this stuff. And it's like, where am I now?
You're going to go back like Wonder Woman, girl. Like bring a cape and show up in red.
Gosh.
Like own it. Heck yes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for everybody to see you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just going to be kind of interesting to see all that, a flashback.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you've been through like some of the hardest things ever. How do you stay soft?
I'm going to tell you right now, it's not rainbows and roses. I'm not always, I have my moments,
Expected.
Yeah, I have my moments where I get jaded of still like, can I trust people? Yeah. That creeps in for sure. I've thought about doing a second book to talk about how in my adulthood, things from my childhood are still at play. But as far as being soft, I think I just really try to be empathetic for people and sympathetic at the same time, and realize we all have our own story. We all have our own cross to bear, so to speak. And I wish I had more people that understood that with me, in a sense, because one thing as an adult now, people are always like, oh, you'll figure it out. You always do. And sometimes that angers me when people say that. And people are like, why would that make you angry? Because sometimes I don't always want to have it figured out. I don't always want to be the one that you just know I'm going to get through it. I just want somebody to let me cry about it and say, maybe I'm not going to get through this. That's kind of like
every leader ever, right? It's like, listen, I don't want to be responsible for all the things all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I want to fall apart. But I think everybody just thinks I never will. And so I feel I always have to have it together.
Do you let yourself fall apart?
I absolutely let myself fall apart. Yeah.
Good. What does that look like and how does that show up for you?
It usually comes to me through meditation.
Okay.
I love to meditate and be with my thoughts. And that's usually when the tears come and I sit with my thoughts and realize, okay, I don't have to be strong. I'm in this room by myself that's what I mean. I don't want to get too woo-woo, but just like letting myself sit with who I really am and what's coming to me. Last night I cried.
Aww.
So, just sometimes it'll come out of nowhere. Other times I'm like a trash compactor and I'm used to being that way from, you're meant to be sitting there and not heard or seen, and so that comes from that childhood wound where I will compact and compact and compact until I'm so full I can't take it anymore, and then it just bursts out of me. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, I definitely, when I can feel it building up, which I think it's normal for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Like there's like, hey, this isn't the time to process this, so I just need to be strong.
Yeah.
But eventually you just need this spot to let it go.
Right.
And I am notorious for just standing in the shower and crying. Right? Like
Okay.
I'm going to let it all flush out and it's going in the drain, all these thoughts, all these feelings, so that I can feel it and let it go and then move on.
I do that too, actually, now that I think about it. Crying in the shower is a thing. Yeah.
It is a thing, yes. So if anybody's having a really hard time, this is your permission slip to go take a shower and let it out.
Yeah.
No big deal. What does it mean to you to be a voice for the voiceless?
My podcast, I have my own podcast. It's called Speak Loud.
Yeah.
And I chose that because it's speak loud even if your voice shakes.
Especially if your voice shakes,
yes.
maybe even.
Stand in your truth. Stand in, even though it's scary to talk about, even though maybe it's your first time ever telling somebody, stand in your truth. So I think a big thing of why I am the way I am or why I found success is because, again, I think I mentioned this earlier, is I want to be a catalyst to others to realize you too can rise above your circumstance and overcome. Mm-hmm. It may not be the prettiest, it may not be the easiest way there, but it's your way. And you'll find your voice in that way, along the way.
Yeah.
So.
I know for me, I was checking boxes in life. Right? Like I kept looking externally for validation.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the income, I have the job, I have the house, I have the car, I have the whatever. And whenever I had those things, like I would sit down, I'm like, I'm not fulfilled. Like, I'm not happy. Like, why did I think this would bring me to these spaces that it's not? And so, like, I had to have, like, the big reckoning, right? Where it's like, okay, the car accident happened for me because it allowed me to just have a line in the sand and be like, okay, that was Jenn before.
Right.
Jenn now realizes, like, I check out of this planet by myself.
Yeah.
Right? So I appreciate your opinion, but I don't need to know it. Like, I just need to do my thing and whatever it is. And it's funny because once you start owning what I originally called as like the ugly parts of myself, like I realized my perception of what other people would think that was versus the reality was so much bigger.
Right.
So when I started to be able to just live my truth and disappoint others and be like, here's who I am, it actually brought more people closer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you're human. You're not this superhuman, or you're not this fake person, or you're not these things, right? It was, I don't know. I think as we learn to tell our story, even if we're shaking in the beginning, like you really start to attract those people that see the whole you. And that's a different level of love to receive.
You know, I just had a Tiffany epiphany. That's what I call it.
Ooh.
I remember my aunt one time seeing me cry. And she's now become one of my best friends. She's my dad's half-sister. But she saw me crying and she goes, so you are human. Right. Because I've always had this tough exterior. And when you just said that, that really resonated with me because it's so true, right? We put on this like, we'll get through it, everything's okay. But really, sometimes we just need to cry. Yeah. And I think, too, I don't know if you do this or not. You're just talking about, you know, checking these boxes. For me, sometimes I don't revel in the current success.
Oh, it's
meaning
so hard,
like
right?
You know, like you hit a goal, but then you don't celebrate it. You're like, okay, what's the next goal? Right? Do you do that?
Oh,
you know, like, what's the next mountain I'm going to climb?
For that. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. That I've actually had to stop doing it because I have children and they're watching. And when one of my kids came up to me and I had like done this amazing thing and I blew it off, and they're like, well, why aren't we celebrating? Is my win not important? I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, nope, we are celebrating like it's the 4th of July and my birthday at the same time because I wanted her to celebrate her wins.
Yeah.
Right? So like any time that I kind of want to rush through that. And I think it's funny because when we have this win, I almost have this instant expectation of myself to do something bigger.
Right.
Right? And I'm like, well, wait, that's taken away from this moment. And maybe that is allowed to be a highlight. Like, why do I have to outdo what I just did?
Right. Oh, that resonates with me so much, girl. You're speaking my language.
Yeah,
yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So all of us that are the overachievers, because achieving feels so darn good, like learning how to sit in that season of 1, celebrating your win, and then 2, like not chasing another one.
Right.
Like I had a year of that where I made myself sit and be like, okay, I get to check the box if I've done nothing.
Yeah.
And I started having to put those kinds of tasks on my to-do list to be able to become that person. It's terrible.
Do you ever feel like when you have downtime, you're like, I should be doing something?
I can't sit.
Yeah.
I can't even watch television without doing something else.
Same.
And anytime we go to the movies, it's like a free nap.
Yeah.
So I'll take the kids to the movies and like, Mom, you sleep through every movie we go to.
You're like, yeah, I just finally wind down.
Finally wind down. No, I know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
We're so unique, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like how we do things. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, we haven't really gotten into, so you went to the University of Utah. What did you study? What did you graduate with?
I went to the School of Communications, so I was on a leadership scholarship.
Okay.
So I did not graduate.
Okay.
I ended up getting into real estate. Kind of a long story short, when I was waitressing at that restaurant I was telling you about, I had a guy that came in regularly, always had cufflinks, dressed really nice. I'm like, wow, that guy, he's doing well for himself. And as a waitress, when you're dropping food off or drink off, you kind of hear tidbits of the conversation. And he was always talking real estate. And I've always thought that was the unattainable goal. You know, we lived in a very tiny, my dad still lives in this house. It's a 500 square foot house, sheep herder's house. And we never owned anything. And a lot of my family, you know, grandparents, things like that, didn't own. And so I always thought, man, that's the American dream for me, really.
Yeah, right.
And so I always thought, if you had real estate, you were someone. And so his name was Matt Matson. Okay. I don't know why his mom named him Matt Matson, but I was
Welcome to Utah.
Yeah, I was like, tell me how you're making money in real estate. And he's like, well, I mentor people, show them how to flip houses and wholesale houses and so on and so forth. I said, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to do real estate. I always wanted to get into a house. And he goes, well, I could mentor you. And I was like, great. Like, what would that entail? And he's like, well, I charge $10,000 and blah, 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 blah. And I just all of a sudden like, oh.
Yeah, like you're all excited and then the energy goes out like a light switch.
I'm like, I'm going to take the money from my tips tonight to get home and maybe buy some groceries. You know, I don't have $10,000. So that kind of sat with me. I felt very deflated.
Yeah.
But it kicked around in my head like, man, there's got to be a way. And he would still come in and he would request me when he came in. And I saw him, I don't know how many months went by, and I said to him, I have a proposition for you. I don't have money, but I have time. What if I volunteer my time? I will take out your trash. I will make the coffee. I will go get your dry cleaning. I'll vacuum the floors just to be in your environment and hopefully pick some of this up, even if it's the little crumbs. And he took me up on it. I literally did all the little minutia things he didn't want to do for free.
Okay.
On top of all the other things I was doing.
Wow.
You know, I had to keep a certain grade point average to keep my scholarship and stuff like that. And because I was focusing so much on what he was doing, my grades started to slip. And the dean sat me down and said, well, the next semester, if your grades don't come back up, which I've always been a straight A student, so that was kind of like a, whoa, what's going on here? Like a wake-up call. He basically had to come to Jesus and said, hey, you got to buck up or you can't have the scholarship anymore. And so I finally kind of sat with myself and said, you know, after doing stuff with Matt, he showed me how to flip my first paper. So meaning like wholesale, right? You gain access to a property by locking it down and then you assign the contract to somebody else. That's how it went at the time. And I made $10,000 on that assignment of contract.
What?
Which is
Your
kind of
first
funny.
deal?
Yeah.
Wow. The exact dollar amount that he was charging for the course.
But he never asked me for any of the money.
Okay.
And so I rolled that into my next transaction. And my next transaction, I'm thinking, man, I could easily make $100,000 doing this. And I'm going to school for communications. I knew I wanted to be in communication in some form. And so I dropped out. I dropped out of college and said, I'm going to be a real estate investor full time.
Wow.
And never looked back. I became a millionaire in my 20s. I think I was 28 years old and was buying houses all over the valley and holding on to them, renting them out. I had a great portfolio and slowly, I hope I'm not fast forwarding too much here, but I went from having long-term rentals to having to evict someone. My first eviction.
I can't even imagine.
And I'm such a hard on my sleeve. No. And this family, they had little kids and it was Christmas time. And I was like, I can't do this. This is not who I am. I let them stay all the way into March. So 3 months by the time I finally evicted them. And when they left, they did about $7,000 in damage. And I had to take them to court. And then I had a judgment, and then I had to garnish wages, and then they declared bankruptcy. Of course. So then I couldn't garnish wages. So I'm like, well, that was a waste of time.
Do you ever get to garnish wages in the future then if they get a job, or no, it's
I
wiped
could
out with the bankruptcy?
if they defaulted on their bankruptcy.
Okay.
So I had to just keep watching with that.
Jeez.
So I said, okay, I can spend $7,000 and get the house back up to rentable condition.
Okay.
Or I can... And the Airbnb thing came about because I was feeling sorry for myself sitting on my front porch. There's an Airbnb on my street. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm literally sitting there crying, feeling so bad about the situation. And I see the guests checking into the house at 2 in the morning. And I thought, that Airbnb does really good. Maybe I should try Airbnb. That's literally, it was like my Tiffany Epiphany light bulb. It just came like a download.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Crying on the front porch at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Amazing things show up at 2 in the morning in our lives, don't they?
Yeah. So I said, why don't I spend $30 and renovate it a little, put some furniture in there and try it. Try Airbnb.
Yeah.
What do I have to lose? Worst case scenario, I got to sell the furniture and go back to renting. And I went from making $1,500 a month to anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 a month right off the bat.
Wow. Just by listing it on Airbnb and VRBO?
Well, so there's a little bit more to that story. I used to work for a TV show on A&E, and I would travel all the time. For about 10 years, I was living out of a suitcase, 40 weeks a year. The story
just keeps getting better. What? Okay.
So because I was living out of a suitcase, I thought to myself, making this Airbnb or creating it, setting it up, what did I love about living out of my suitcase? So I kind of put myself in their shoes of what was the conveniences that I had while I was on the road that I want to put into this home. And so I just started to make it cozy and thoughtful the way I would want to travel. And I was still traveling at the time, making very great money, showing people how to flip houses across the nation. And so I said, okay, I'm going to try it. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work. And like I say, it went really well to the point that I started converting all my other ones into Airbnbs. And then I had friends and family saying, well, you're successful. Show me how to do it. And then the news says, come on and show people across the nation how to do this through a news story. And then I went on and it just kind of was word of mouth. It came to me out of nowhere, literally. I created something out of nothing, and I'm very fortunate in that way.
Well, there's a lot behind that story too. You have this attitude that it's like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. Right. And I love, because I'm like thinking of my children at the age that you were making these decisions where you're like, I made $10,000 and instead of spending it, which you could have easily done, right? You've been like pinching pennies, living in basements, doing like waiting tables, like all the little things.
Yeah.
You could have been like, hey, I get to splurge. Like I get to buy a new car. I get to have the latest iPhone, or I get to have whatever.
Right.
And you had the discipline to say, okay, if this did this, I'm going to reinvest all of it and go do something bigger.
To the next one, yeah. And I slowly became a private money lender as time went on, where I was lending people the money to flip their own houses and make money. So it was like a full circle moment for sure.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. No, I can tell, like I was in rentals for a hot second and then had renter issue. And I'm like, I'm not made for that. Like I can't do that. That's just, it drains me. It exhausts me. It's mentally, emotionally, physically, all of it is just draining.
Yeah.
And so it kind of turned me off to the world. But I love that you figured out this Airbnb thing and then teach it to everybody.
Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake people make when they're trying to build wealth through real estate?
I have this saying, it's the start that stops you.
I think so too.
That's
it's kind of
their
when you buy
biggest
businesses
mistake.
too.
Yep.
If you pay too much on the front end, you'll never recover.
Yep. But it's analysis paralysis is what happens to people. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure you're guilty of it, especially overachievers can tend to be that way. Just take that first step. So it's always the start that stops you towards success, happiness, joy. You know, if you've always said, I want to climb mountains, but you never do it, that's not going to get you anywhere. So go climb a mountain. Go take that first step and climb that first step onto the mountain. And the next thing you know, you're to the top and you're like, holy crap, I did that. I didn't think I could. You know, same thing with real estate. Take that first step. Find someone to mentor you or start saving your money to get your first property. Maybe it's a mobile home. I've owned mobile homes before. You know, whatever it takes to get you to that next step, that next step, that next step.
And how were you learning to identify properties that made sense to buy?
Well, now I have a set formula. I've got it real dialed in. I have a lot of realtors, so I'm also a realtor, and I have a lot of my peers that come to me because it's such a niche. A lot of people don't know about Airbnbs. They'll say, I have a client that wants to buy an Airbnb, but I don't know how to know if it's a good one or a bad one. Okay. So they'll send me an address, and I'll say, okay, here's what your occupancy rate can be. Here's what your nightly rate can be. Here's you know, what you can get per night, things like that, where I've just honed it in. I've been doing this a decade now. I'm known as Queen B&B is what a lot of people call me. And I just know how to analyze the numbers based on my own experience. It's real, raw numbers, and just kind of make an educated decision from there. You know, I'll look at other properties that are already performing in the area and see what they're doing and what amenities they have, what we can do to set ourselves apart, and been rocking it ever since.
Yeah, and I love how you started this as, like, it wasn't everything at once.
Yeah.
Right? I think a lot of us all of a sudden are like, well, I need to get my real estate license, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. No, like you said, start, do the one thing, and then if you really like this, then maybe get your real estate license, or maybe do this different piece or whatever. But like, it's really just getting in the game. Yep. Because I think nothing teaches you like starting to play. Exactly.
And birds of a feather flock together. I say this all the time. Surround yourself with who you want to be like. You know, if you surround yourself with success, if you hang out with drug addicts, you're going to be a drug addict. You're hanging out with losers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Hang out with, you know, where you're not the smartest person in the room, as they say.
And so is that you there can groups really level in Utah or other places where you can be like, hey, we're all trying to do this area together?
It's easy. Go to Meetup.
Okay.
Look for a group that's real estate investors. Maybe you don't know a thing about real estate investing. Maybe it makes you very intimidated and uncomfortable. But think about what I did with Matt. I knew nothing about real estate, but I knew by being around him, I was going to naturally absorb that in some capacity. Yeah. So if you want to be a realtor, go to realtor meetups. If you want to be a real estate investor, go to real estate investor groups, surround yourself with who you want to be.
I like that. I know when I started climbing mountains, I didn't know anybody that climbed a mountain. And so it seemed like this crazy stretch. And then I hired a coach, and the coach is like, well, here's 2 people that climbed Everest. Why don't you go out to lunch with them?
There you go.
I'm like, okay, I went out to lunch with him. And I just remember this guy like spilling ketchup on his shirt. I'm like, if he spills ketchup on his shirt, I spill ketchup on my shirt. We can both climb Everest. That must be a sign.
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
It just starts normalizing what was not normal for you when you change your surrounding.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. What kind of legacy do you want Queen Bee Properties to leave?
A legacy for women.
Awesome.
There's, women empowerment in this industry. I mean, there are a lot of females in the real estate world, but women to just be empowered to build their own empire. Whatever that looks like, whether it's selling homes, doing Airbnbs, maybe you're going to be like the best lady out there that does appraisals, whatever it may be. The legacy is I want people to realize if they want to do it, they can do it, and everybody can be a boss babe.
I love it. All those boss babes listening, this is your chance. What scares you right now?
Oh, man. Failure.
Failure.
I've always been afraid of failure, which is a huge driver for me. It scares me I think that's one thing I lack, and this is something that I've really come to terms with, is on social media, we always portray we're this person. You know what I mean? Where here's our success, here's our trip, here's our whatever the case may be. And I've tended to be less vulnerable on social media.
Okay.
And I think it's because I think if I share where I'm lacking, then I'm no longer a success.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, because when you're climbing a mountain, like it's so fun to wave your flag at the top.
Yeah.
But when you have to turn around because the weather's bad or something happens to a teammate or whatever else, and you need to like wave your flag while you're going down, like to have that same pride is like, it takes effort.
Right.
Right? Because you're like, yeah, we didn't make it. Here's what we did wrong, or here's what happened. And I actually need your help because I need to get off this mountain.
Yeah.
And it's not my favorite flag to wave, but I have learned to wave it. And not saying I enjoy it too much, but at the same time, it's probably where my biggest learnings have come from.
It's funny you say that. My last Century ride, I had a tire that would just kept going flat, and they have like the Papa Bears is what they call them, little come and like fix your tire, but nobody had my specific tube.
Oh, geez.
So I had to keep CO2, like putting CO2 on it, like every, couple of miles. And this was the last 10 miles.
Oh, I'd be so
and
angry.
what kept me going was there are people waiting for me at the finish line. And I certainly don't want to show up in the vehicle because with my bike in the back because I couldn't finish.
Oh my gosh, you're amazing.
So I think that is a big driver for me is the fear of failure. I don't want to be a failure. I've made it this far. I've done these things. There's no reason why I can't do a million others. So you just can't.
You're building off your successes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do. I have to keep my successes on speed dial.
Yeah.
So that when I'm in a frustrating moment, I'm like, nope, this is a moment. These are all the things I've done that are amazing. Get back into your amazingness and stop like dwelling here.
Yeah.
Have you had any failures with the business?
Oh, yeah.
With properties and stuff? And how do you process that?
I think sometimes we're always our own worst critic.
Of course.
And realizing where, okay, I was wrong here. I maybe got a little ahead of myself. Maybe not so much in Airbnb. I've been very, very fortunate with Airbnb. I haven't had a ton of failures. I mean, I've had some bad guests where I've learned, okay, now I need to do this, and this to vet better guests. I had somebody shoot a gun through the floor, puncture a water line, and cause flooding in a house. I'm like, but how could I prevent that somebody's bringing a gun?
What?
Yeah. I could write a book about the things that have happened in Airbnbs.
We have some books coming, friends. I think we've mentioned 2 or 3 already. Oh my gosh, what?
Yeah, so that's a failure, right? Like I have to call the owner and say, well, somebody just shot a hole through your floor and it punctured the water line and now there's flooding. So he claimed he was cleaning his gun at the time to go to the gun range. But how am I going to prevent that? How am I going to predict that? You know what I mean? But to me, that's a failure, because now we can't rent it. How long is it going to take to fix it? And now we got to go through a process. And so those might be failures in my Airbnb business. But I've definitely had as a realtor where I've not been able to sell a house and somebody hired a different realtor. They're like, I don't want to keep using you because I was new and I thought I'm taking on $1 million+ home and I was a new realtor. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't market it the right way. So yeah, that's a hit to your pride for sure. And I'm
Yeah.
a Leo, so I'm very prideful.
That's a thing. It's a definite thing. No, but I think a key point to listen to how you're describing this all is like every failure, though, you've dissected.
Yes.
And be like, okay, well, here's how I vet better. Here's how I do this different. Or here's what I've learned. And so now you're more prepared for the next thing.
Yep, it's a stepping stone to your success.
Definitely.
And you have to fall sometimes. Even though we hate it when we're overachievers, you have to fall to be able to really hit that next level sometimes.
I agree. How do you define success today different than 10 years ago?
So when I've given my presentations, I would always say to people, success to me is not the car you drive, the watch you wear, the clothes you have. Success to me is what you can inspire other people to do. And I think as long as I'm inspiring people to be their best selves or to be more successful or to be more open or realize they can overcome anything, that to me is a success. You know, I have this saying on my kitchen wall that says, I believe that friends are angels who pick us up when our wings have trouble remembering how to fly. And I really try to be that for other people, to pick you up, help you realize you can get through this too. You can find the success. And, you know, it's just a moment in time. So
Yeah. I think once we've had the success, the evolution from there is significance.
Yeah.
Like, where do we turn this for other people so they can have that feeling that we had?
Yeah.
Because that feeling you get the first time, you're like, I want everybody to feel this way. It would change the world.
Yeah.
Let's go.
yeah,
Awesome.
success is really inspiration.
Yeah.
So
100%. All right, we're going to do a lightning round.
Ooh, okay.
Are you here for it?
All right, let's go.
Woo!
I didn't have any coffee or Red Bull this morning.
If you saw it, she warmed up. Okay, number one. What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
Besides go to the bathroom like everybody else, meditate.
Meditate. How many minutes?
Just depends on how long I need.
Okay, I like that. One word people use to describe you.
Resilient.
100%. Most rebellious thing you've ever done.
Most rebellious thing I've ever done. I don't know. I've played by the rules a lot in my life. That's hard because I haven't had like parents when I was younger to rebel against.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty awesome that you get dropped out of school because it wasn't right.
I had a fake ID once and got into a club and went drinking with friends.
What? Busted.
Whoa, scandalous.
Truth's out.
So scandalous.
I love it. TED Talk or Tiny Cabin in the Woods?
TED Talk.
TED Talk. Craziest thing that's ever happened at a keynote?
I had to throw up behind the screen of that I was presenting in front of.
Oh my gosh.
I got food poisoning. I was in San Antonio, Texas. Got some fish tacos on the Riverwalk thinking, hey, this is going to be great. And I literally told my crew in the back, I'm mic'd up or whatever, and I said, have a bucket for me behind because I think I might have to. So I was popping these Altoids just to, because the peppermint kind of soothes.
Yeah.
And I was just sipping water. I wasn't moving at all. I was not dynamic at all. You see I talk with my hands a lot. I was just sitting there, leaning on a chair, giving this presentation or this talk. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I asked the group a question. I can't remember what it was. I was like, how many of you guys? And I went to raise my hand, and then all of a sudden I was like, and went behind the stage and puked. It was so embarrassing.
And then came back on?
And came back on.
Show goes on, friends.
Yeah,
the
and
show
just
goes
kept
on.
talking. And I was like, I'm so sorry I had food poisoning. And everybody was so impressed that I just kept going. But I was like, I came to do this. I'm here for it. I just got to go.
I have a new level of love for you right now. This is amazing. Most underrated real estate tip?
Ooh. Your friends and family are not a real estate transaction. The majority of my business comes from my friends and family, and then they refer, and then they refer, and they refer, is to not treat people like a real estate transaction.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Good. Something unique in your purse right now?
Ooh. Okay. I have an addiction to Slap Your Mama, which is a spice.
Explain. This needs explanation. I'm just letting you know.
It's a spice. I carry my own container of this spice. It's like cayenne pepper, black pepper, white pepper, garlic, and it's like a Louisiana spice.
Okay.
And I keep it in my purse as well as a little thing of Yellowbird hot sauce because I love spice.
Oh my God, this is awesome. Okay. One thing you never apologize for?
Being myself.
I freaking love it. Awesome. This has been so much fun to get to know you better. How does the audience follow along or learn more about all Tiffany Barnes?
Well, you can find me on Instagram.
Yep.
It's queen_b_properties. I should probably have something a little more easy. So queen_b_properties. Tiffany Barnes on Facebook, and you can also find me on queenbproperties.com.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
What an amazing episode today on resilience, owning who you are, and just keeping going, right? Like resilience is your superpower. So thank you, Tiffany. All of you listening today, be sure to subscribe and like, and we'll see you next week on the pod.